out a little bit?
Well, and good morning, everybody, and welcome live here to the Elite Sports Academy for this week's edition of the DPPG Sports Show. My name is Devin Poslesny. I am joined by Mr. Michael Foley and Dan Kernan. I realize our names are out of order on that graphic, so sorry about that.
True. Mine's
right.
good.
Dan's is right.
Yeah.
Mine's
I am
full.
not Devin.
Foley and I are switched. My bad. I changed our spots, and here we are. Sorry.
I'll be all right.
My bad. All right, so
Good morning.
Good morning. So this week's show, we're talking about playoffs. We're going to talk about regular season basketball for Laconia. They're finishing up, as well as some hockey stuff. But for the most part, we're talking playoffs because D3 is mostly what we cover for basketball.
Playoffs.
And here they are. So... So here we go. Don't forget, if for some reason the live stream goes down, we'll do our best to get back online, but just putting that out there. So let's talk about the three playoff games that we covered this week, which were we had the prelims at Prospect Mountain against Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
Girls. Then we had the quarterfinals between Prospect Mountain and Hopkinton and girls, as well as Conant and Gilford.
Boys.
Yes. Thank you. All the other Lakes Region schools were on the road if they made it,
or he decided not to cover them. If we're going to be,
you're
happens.
if we're going to be,
you are a pain in the butt. You know that,
right?
right?
If we're going to cover it the way if we're going to call a zebra, you had some opportunities to cover.
To go to Hopkinton.
Hey, it's a short trek from Belmont.
It's 45 minutes down the highway.
Hey, whatever.
It's 20 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
So we could have sent you with a camera.
You could have.
I was there. I was sitting front row. You could have given me
minutes.
one. It was an eventful afternoon down there.
We would have been seeing the ceiling, knowing you with your camera.
Nah, I'd have just put it right on the baseline.
That's true.
Nice.
Wow.
I have some ties. Dan and I get along pretty well down there at Hopkinton.
Dan is a great guy down there.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, anyways, all the other Laconia or Lake Region schools were either on the road, like Gilford girls were at Kearsarge, played at Kearsarge. Interlakes boys was at Kearsarge. Newfound was at Hopkinton. Newfound girls was at Hopkinton, and that's about it for playoff teams that schools we normally cover. Did you guys catch any of either Prospect games or the Gilford game?
I knew about the Gilford game just from that aspect. I was actually kind of, just to talk about the Prospect girls, I really kind of expected them to go further in in the playoffs and stuff. They were a strong team all season long, and ran into a very strong, very talented Hopkinton girls team. So
Right.
kind of the way seeding for a lot of these schools matters, and where Prospect ended up definitely they drew the short straw, if you will.
Right. Dan?
I didn't. I watched the Gilford game. I shut it off at halftime. Gilford was doing what Gilford's done all year, and it was a blowout. And it was a Friday night, so I decided Gilford's going to take care of business. I went on to go do other things. For the Prospect Mountain team, I don't know if they made the playoffs last year, but they were a pretty solid team from what I saw early on in the season for having a limited roster.
Yep.
They played well. I've seen Hopkinton girls a handful of times in the playoffs when our girls teams played, and that's basically who we got knocked out by was Hopkinton. They have a really good program, and they're coached well, and there's a lot of tradition that goes into that. And I didn't expect Prospect to beat them just based on the fact that Hopkinton has had a good track record in the playoffs, both boys and girls, to basically get the job done. And a Final Four season for them is basically, the starting point or the launching point for both of those teams. Exactly, yeah. Like you're assuming that that's going to be the thing. You're playing until the Final Four every year, guaranteed, mark it down, and that's when you really start to tweak some things to try to get to that championship game. So I wasn't shocked by the score. I was expecting the Hopkinton to move on. I was impressed that Prospect Mountain was able to do the things that they did with the number of athletes that they had.
Right.
Because what do they have? 8?
9.
9. You're not playing 5v5 all season. You're running your offenses and your defenses against 4 players.
Right.
So you're not getting that full game-like feel that you and I are trying to do in the fall when we're running drill work and stuff like that. Like, they don't have that opportunity to run that unless a coach or a friend or, you know, a parent or whomever steps in to make that 5-on-5. So for them to make it as far as they did with 9 girls, I mean, granted, they had some injuries. They had a girl pick up I don't know if she got a concussion, but she got hurt in our game. So that 9 went to 8, which could go to 7, and you had some illnesses. Like, they could have been the same thing. I know Winnisquam was in the same boat. Girls program didn't have a lot of numbers, and they had a stretch where they were short. And they said they lost to Kearsarge, I believe, last night. I don't know if it was Kearsarge or if it was Conant. I think it was Conant.
Kearsarge was at Conant.
Was it? I think Winnisquam girls lost at Stevens. At Stevens.
Yes.
And they're in the same boat. I mean, but that was a team or a program that hasn't had a lot of, to be frank, they haven't won a game. They haven't won a lot of games in the last handful of years.
Stevens or Winnisquam?
Winnisquam girls.
But Winnisquam girls were 6 seed.
They had 6 or 7, and they had a really good year with limited numbers as well. So to see those two teams to do the things that they do and make a quarterfinal with limited roster size, that's an impressive feat in itself in the Lakes Region area.
Right. Yeah. So little backstory, honestly. So just in reffing middle school basketball, I've had Barnstead over the last few years. I usually get them 2-3 times a season, and their girls program is lights out.
Yeah.
Lights out. And that middle school coach then became the varsity coach for Prospect this year. So
Ryan McKenna.
Ryan does a fantastic job, and Ryan brought in that kind of mentality of working with all of these kids. And so I think a lot of them are used to playing for him and are used to kind of, just
exactly.
They work. Yeah. They work incredibly hard.
Yeah, and you have to. And when you have a small roster, you have to.
Yeah, right.
If you want to be successful.
Yeah.
There have been. I've been a part of some teams that have low numbers that are just okay with being there. They're okay with playing the 14 or 15 games that we play, and when the season's over, we had a good time, blah blah blah, and we go back and get ready for the next sport. So it's not. It's good to see it on the positive side. And obviously they were hoping to beat Hopkinton. They were preparing to beat Hopkinton and move on, but it's not. It doesn't, and that's a hard part of losing in a playoff in a quarterfinal atmosphere because you're so close. Right. You're so close to that Final Four and taking that next step that you don't necessarily want it to be like looking at it as, that was just a failure of a failure of our season. We didn't do what we wanted to do. It's so hard to look at the overall big picture. Even now, like they played last night, so. It's going to be tough. That's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week before you're finally like, we had a really good year, even though we didn't get to the goal that every coach is hoping for, regardless of where your program was coming in.
And it does stink, though, because talking to the team and even talking to Coach McKenna, you're right, they work their tails off. But even with that, they're only 6 girls deep. Yeah. And like going back to that Wednesday night prelim game against Berlin, that was number 4 Prospect versus number 13 Berlin. The numbers say
Prospect should win based on seeding, yeah.
Right. But they had a 14-point lead, typical basketball size lead, and then it results in them going to overtime.
Wow.
Because Prospect got tired and Berlin caught up. And Prospect was able to beat them in OT by, 51-49 or something like that, and move on to the quarters. But it was still something where, like, I was watching the hockey. I was at a hockey game. I'm watching it going, wait, what the heck is going on? They had a 10 to 15 point lead the whole game, and then all of a sudden that was gone.
Time.
And Berlin is a team that's coached extremely well.
Right.
I mean, their coach they have now, Picard, has been in Berlin and Gorham and the North Country for years and years and years, both boys and girls. And that girls team from Berlin is a solid program. They just have been for years, for a handful of years.
Right.
So for them to be at the 13 seed, if you look at seeding all the time, 13 shouldn't beat 4s, but 13s and 4s are always a battle. 12s and 5s are always a battle. Yeah. I mean, 16s and 1s sometimes are battles, but it's not. In high school sports, in a game where it literally doesn't, the seeding is just kind of a thing. in Division III where it's so broad of where you're playing and scheduling wise. Like, you could be the 4 seed and not play anybody all year.
Right.
Or you could be the 13 seed and you've played 12 games against teams who are in the top 10.
Well, your strength of schedule
exactly.
is totally different.
And so and people, when they're looking at the brackets, they're like, Berlin's a 13 seed, we're going to roll them. And kids are notorious for this.
Right.
Kids are notorious being like, we're the 4 seed, we're just going to take care of business, it's going to be no problem. Berlin's record's not that good, we'll be okay. And then you come in, it's like Berlin played Gilford girls twice, or Winnisquam, St. Thomas. Like, you take the top 5 from their division and just be like, they played those teams 10 times.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They might have won 3 out of those 10, and they're like, 3-7, that's not good. They were competitive in 10 playoff atmosphere games where you're the top 4 or 5 team and you're blowing people out. Unless you're that much better than the 1 or 2 teams that are at the top of every division are usually that much better than everybody else. Strength of schedule is something that doesn't get talked about enough.
Right.
Going into the playoffs, and if we're going to talk about strength of scheduling and stuff like that,
let's bring up Conan.
No, I don't even want to bring up Conan.
Oh, okay.
We'll talk. And I don't know if you talked about this.
That's a great example.
I don't know if we talked about this. If you talked about this last week, because I watched In and Out. White Mountain Boys.
Did not bring them up.
White Mountain Boys.
White Mountains.
White Mountain Boys finishes the 13th spot in the Division III tournament. And they did not play a single playoff game this year.
Why? Because
their schedule, they didn't play enough games in Division III.
Yep.
Of their 16, they played 10. So they played 6 Division IVs, so they were on the outside looking in. Yep. That's strength of schedule right there.
Yep.
Right.
And it's regional-based scheduling right there.
Right.
So you're getting you're playing your close schools and stuff like that, but they're not playing as many Division III schools, and that might not be. I don't know what their record was against those 6 Division IV wins, or games. They could have won all of them. They could have lost all of them. I mean, there are some good North Country Division IV basketball teams.
Right.
But
Littleton.
that I know Littleton pretty much right them on the championship every year.
Although we'll say profile.
Profile's good. Profile's really good. But
kid can shoot.
But it's just one of those things and the North Country teams almost kind of get that. Not necessarily the knock on them because they don't come down to play this area. They'll come and play us.
Yeah.
They don't generally go to Winnisquam South. Yeah. So they're not playing those teams that might be at the top of the division.
Yeah. They're not playing at Campbell. They're not playing at Conan.
No, because they're trying to keep it close distance wise because they're already on a bus quite a bit anyway. Mm-hmm. But I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen it. That's the first time I've ever seen a team make the playoffs and then not make the playoffs based on schedule.
Right.
Yep.
First time ever.
But I also think that's more the NHIAA finally kind of sticking to its guns about but moving forward now, like a lot of those schools like you and I in soccer, our schedules are set. They're done for next year, and it's just a flip of what we did the previous year.
Yeah.
And basketball, to a degree, is the same way. They're locked into that 2-year cycle.
And this is year 1 of that cycle.
So next year, when you're White Mountains and you're going, I want a more competitive schedule, you might not be able to get it because, and they're going to have to. They're going to have to lose some of those D4 games, so they're eligible for the playoffs.
Well, I mean, I heard from one of the athletic directors that they normally play an 18-game schedule, and that's where they got away with playing 6 Division 4 schools.
Yep.
So I almost wonder if next year they just say, let's find 2 more Division 3 games. This way you don't have to blow up that schedule.
16?
They only had 16 on the schedule.
Yeah, and that was
a lot of schools only played 16 or 17 this year.
And that was because
Division 3.
Everyone
complains about basketball taking too long.
Right.
It starts at Thanksgiving break. You play during Christmas break. You're playing during February break, and then all of it. So you're missing those 3 vacation-ish times, and everyone complains and complains and complains. So Division 1, 2, and 4 are still playing regular season. I know Division 4 just finished Wednesday. Division 3 is going to play their Final 4 this week.
And their championship game
Division 4 is starting their playoffs this week.
Right.
And Division 1 and 2, which we put on the pedestal all the time, are probably still going to go.
They're going to start February break.
So they took the 10 days off of the regular season for Division 3, and then last year played all 18 games. And it was I mean, and plus with COVID, like Interlinks played like 9 games in 11 days last year to end the season because they had to get them all in. So this year they were like, as year one, let's just play 16 like everybody else in every other sport. So,
but with White Mountains, they just didn't adjust their schedule accordingly.
And White Mountain had a new coach, and I've talked to a handful of coaches in basketball that all say the same thing. I'd have never known that. I would have never known that was the rule.
But that falls on the AD.
It does.
It falls on the AD.
It does fall on the AD.
And more so if you're a new coach.
And if Curtis was still up there at White Mountain, that would have never happened.
Yeah.
It would have absolutely never happened. And I don't know if the new coach or the AD or anything up at White Mountain was just like, oh, maybe this is a rebuilding year because they graduated a ton of guys between Hicks, LeBounty, and Hazelton. Like, they lost a lot of guys. Like, they're probably thinking, how can it be a rebuilding year? We're probably not going to be in the playoffs anyway, so let's not worry about it. I don't want to say that that's what happened. But if Curtis was still the coach up there and he had been there for years and years and years, that doesn't happen. That absolutely doesn't happen.
But it shouldn't happen. At the end of the day, it shouldn't.
Regardless of who's
and I get
in
that,
the leadership position.
And I've been in those scheduling meetings with ADs, and it's 1 or 2 ADs per division who schedule per sport or whatever, and then the ADs all roam around the room and confirm dates and times. Like, it's nothing crazy or outrageous.
Is that how that happens?
Yes.
It used to be. It used to be when I was the AD. It was many moons ago. It was you walked into a conference room, and it was feast or famine. You fought to get games. You begged coaches to play you.
And
it was crazy.
Now I don't know who does it, but they basically are just like, you have, AD John is scheduling. You have Division III soccer,
right?
And you schedule for the entire division. Yep. And then if you're a school like us who has those crossover games in soccer with Division IV, they just give you 14. They give you the 14 games, and they leave you a handful of open dates to play those crossover games. So that was. I did my internship in 2010 or 11. Yeah. I can't imagine it's changed too much since then.
No,
because why would they? Why would they change it? Yeah. It takes all the work off of some ADs and puts it onto.
It's rotated from an AD to a different AD and stuff.
And since there's not that much turnover, it usually ends up being the same one. But we know what's funny is, and not to get too off topic, it's funny because if you ever have a question about your schedule and you go and ask the AD, like, hey, do you know who made the schedule? Nobody ever knows. No. Nobody ever knows who does it.
I know who did ours for the longest time, and he stopped doing it.
Exactly, but like now you're just like, okay, who did the soccer schedule? And you ask, and it's like, oh, I don't know. It was just given to me. Yeah. So I know there were some parents in the North Country that were a little bit upset with NHIAA, and rightfully so. But NHIAA has nothing to do with scheduling.
No.
Nothing to do with scheduling whatsoever.
They just enforce the rules.
It's just one of those. Yeah. It's one of those very, very unfortunate situations that. White Mountain had a pretty decent finish. I mean, they finished in the 13th seed, and they should have gone to Hopkinton. They should have played at Hopkinton.
Yeah, I mean, last week I sat here by myself, and thanks. Anyways, sat here last week, literally saying, "Okay, Newfound's playing Prospect," and then all of a sudden, White Mountains is gone. Everyone shifts. Berlin's going to Prospect.
Right.
And that's why last week on the show, now all of you understand, I was sitting here going, this is all tentative. Put the asterisk next to it.
Yeah.
Everybody.
It came out, it was early Monday morning.
Right.
It was like it was an hour or two before the bracket even came out.
Right.
That you're on Twitter and you're seeing White Mountains out. White Mountains out.
Belmont girls fell into the playoffs because of that. They got the 15 seed.
Yeah. We were outside looking in, and our boys were in the same boat. Yeah. We were getting ready to get on the bus to go to Mascoma.
Yeah.
Everything was Mascoma. We're going to Mascoma because we were the lower seed in. We move up a spot. Berlin boys, they finish in that last spot and go to Mascoma.
Yeah.
So it affects so many other schools, especially if you are a team that, and every coach does this when you're getting into tournament time and you're like, okay, we need to get to this number to get in, and if we don't, we need a lot of help.
Yeah.
And where the schedule ends, like Friday or Saturday, and you're on the outside, like your kids may or may not be checked out if you don't get to that spot because they're like, oh, we didn't get the help, now we're out.
Yeah. Here, coach, here's my jersey.
Now, exactly. And now all of a sudden it's like, all right, you got to turn the switch back on because guess what? Something happened. We're in.
Right.
And it's hard because, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I've been doing this for years and years now. I had they weren't even out of the locker room before I had some guys coming up and like, oh, it's baseball season now. After we lost to Hopkinton on Tuesday, like they're like, oh, one's baseball, one's baseball, one's baseball. You know what I mean? But like, if you're out on the outside looking in, and then all of a sudden you have to turn it back on, that's a hard switch.
Right.
Really hard.
That's a really hard switch to do, and I don't necessarily know if Berlin or Belmont were having to do that because it was so close to the first.
The Belmont girls definitely were. There was a chance they were like, oh, we didn't get in, and then on Monday they were like, oh my God, we have practice today. We thought we were done. We have practice, and I'm like, all right.
One of the
excited.
One of the managers works for me, and I was like, "Hey, are you good for this game?" And she's like, "Nope, I'm going here." And I was like, "Oh, right, you got affected by White Mountains, you know." And I was like, "Okay, good luck."
Yeah.
So.
It's just one of those unfortunate things that you hope never happens again, but you're glad, like you said, like NHIA like laid the law down, like, hey, we have these policies for a reason. Yeah. Because if not, everyone would go and play down.
You would try to manipulate your schedule to. And there are teams that do that already.
Oh, yeah, there are absolutely schools that do that.
But
100%.
Wasn't there something that happened like this in the fall with one of the other divisions for like soccer or something like that? Somebody didn't make it in.
There are a number. I don't know what school it was, but there were a number of I want to say D3 schools that were playing a lot of D4 games, and it might have been a North Country school,
right?
Or they just didn't make the playoffs based on their schedule anyway, but they were playing a lot of D4 games. Kennett, as a D2 school, was playing a lot of D3 games.
Yeah, they played. Right. Kennett's notorious for playing like White Mountain and Berlin for everything. Yeah, just based on the fact that that's another school that's close to them.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily hurt. In this instance, it would have, because it doesn't count as a D3 win. It doesn't hurt Belmont or Berlin and White Mountain because they're playing up.
Right.
Like, they're still getting competitive games out of it, and there are Division IV teams that are competitive. It hurts Kennett.
Yeah.
It hurts Kennett the same way that White Mountain could be bounced out because they didn't play enough games. Like, Kennett has to play. If they're playing Berlin and White Mountain twice out of 16 games, you got to go and get another one. You got to go play a Division II school, or you got to
find
and
a
that,
Division II
and
school
that puts
willing to play you.
That puts that puts the Kennett AD in a tough situation. That puts the North Country ADs in a tough situation. Like, you got to try to figure out a way, because the minimum is 12, I think. Yeah. Just based on like, that's what you got to play in the division. Like, that's not, and it's not unreasonable to get to that. I mean, basketball plays 2 games a week.
Right.
It's not that hard to add a third. Right. I mean, we do it.
Well, they ended up having to do that as cancellations come in and stuff. So a lot of schools played crunch in those last 2 weeks, where it was 2 games in a row, a day off, a third game. And by the end of the season, you're
gassed.
You're hurt.
Yeah, you're gassed.
Then you're dealing with injuries. Then you're dealing with.
I was gonna say, wasn't it Interlakes who was playing like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday the last week or something like that? Like, it was.
They were all over the place.
4 games in a week.
Yeah, because it was weird because our girls played Somersworth at home, but our boys didn't go down to Somersworth, so it got made up, and they played like Moultonborough, Somersworth, and like Belmont back to back before they played Gilford to end the season. And it was just like, the guys were like, oh, I don't know if we're going to. They had to win 2 of the last 4 to get in. And they were able to. They knocked off a couple of teams that they played Newfound in the last stretch. So they beat Newfound and somebody before that. But like, they were already hurt going into it.
Right.
Like, they had a couple of concussions coming through, and they had a banged up ankle. And TJ rolled his ankle against Winnisquam 19 seconds into senior day. Like, that was a game that turned out to be competitive, but we were already short bench. Yeah. So like, it's one of those things that, like you said, like, if you're playing 4 or 5 games in a 6-day stretch. If you're fortunate enough to not be bit by the injury bug, you're in good shape. But if you are dealing with injuries, or you're a short roster like Prospect and Winnisquam girls, and you're in for a little bit.
Right.
I went to the Belmont Gilford final game of the season, which was senior night for Belmont. And
great jerseys, by the way, for the Raiders. Black names on the back.
Yeah,
really cool.
Those are sweet. But what was interesting about the game is, game starts. We knew it was going to be competitive. Absolute packed house for it, and the game starts, whatever, and then in the halfway through the first quarter, boom, Martinez and Underhill both end up with 2 fouls. Sits them rest of the first quarter, and then sits them the entire second quarter. They didn't touch the court. Belmont was down by 3 at halftime. And you're going, dude, this it's a game. It's a game because you're
getting those 2 guys back.
You're getting those 2 guys back, and they found a way to hold on to be only down by 3.
Right.
At that start the third quarter, totally different game. Just turnover, easy points, and by the beginning of the fourth quarter, Gilford was up by 20.
And Gilford's a team you almost have to play perfect against.
Yeah.
For 32 minutes, and it's hard. They're
super difficult.
They have length, they have size, they have speed, they can shoot, they can do everything on the court that a basketball team has to do. And I mean, that's why they're the 1 seed. That's why they're the 3-time defending champs, or however long it's been in a row. I mean, they're a team you have to play perfectly against. And in the locker, and I think you said it on the broadcast that against the Conant, that Guilford's a pretty good third quarter team, and if you can keep it close, you almost at halftime are like, okay, yeah, we're close. Like it's almost like not a moral victory, but you're almost kind of like taking that deep breath and like, oh,
absolutely,
we're still in this. Like it's good.
You're one shot down. From
and
being
then
a
all
tie
of a sudden
game.
the light switch comes on and you look up and okay, you don't score the first possession. Guilford comes down and scores. It's 5. You turn the ball over. Guilford comes down, scores. It's 8. And before you know it, that 3-point lead or 3-point deficit's turned to 15. Yeah. In 3 possessions, and you're just looking there, and you're like, okay, what happened?
Yeah, so quick.
And that's a team and that's why I shut the game off at halftime in that first round, and they're in the quarterfinal game against Conant.
Now, are you the same type of guy who leaves at halftime of a Patriots game to beat traffic if it's a blowout?
No, I'll stay because I paid for it.
I'm just asking for.
I would never go to. I've only been to 1 Patriots game my entire life.
New England Revolution game. Maybe
it was so cold. But I turned
people at those games anyway.
I turned it off at halftime because Gilford was blowing them out, and Conant couldn't get the ball inside the 3-point line.
Right.
And I was like, "There's just no way. There's no way that Conant's coming back. This is going to be Gilford rolling." I saw Jalen Reese get his 1,000th. We were good. I'm like, whatever. Gilford's going on. They're going to get ready to go play whomever in the semis. And I got a text from one of my guys, and he's like, "Dan, this game's close." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's not close. There's no way." They were down by 20, 22, 25. I turned on and watched the last 4 minutes, and I'm going to be honest, I was rooting for Conant.
Yeah.
I was rooting for Conant. And I might upset some Gilford people or parents who are watching this broadcast or whatever, but come on. I mean,
hey, the title of this broadcast is What's Going On in Guilford. I'm pretty sure we've already upset people.
I know, right? So here's the deal. You guys have won enough. Let somebody else do it. Let somebody else do it. This
is the Interlakes alum
No,
over
this
here.
is literally any other team. I was rooting for Conant.
Right.
Selfishly, for 2 reasons. 1, I wanted to see Gilford lose. 2, I start our baseball season in the spring against Conant. They got some baseball guys on it. I wanted them to go a little longer. I wanted to prolong their winter work pre-spring stuff before the season started to help us as an advantage. When I turned that game on and watched that last 4 minutes, it was a battle.
Yeah.
It was a battle, and
the wheels fell off for Gilford. Something happened in that second half, and Conant was able to catch up.
Well,
and Gilford
honestly,
kind of
it's momentum.
Yeah.
Momentum changes more so in basketball than really kind of any other sport. But you do your best to get on a run, and then it's up to the other team to try to stop you from continuing that run.
Right.
And look, did I watch? I think I saw Conant. I did. I saw Conant play Belmont this year, and it was they're tough. They're really tough.
Right.
They're a physical team,
and they were not a number 8 team. They were definitely a higher-up team, but they played St. Thomas twice. They played Gilford twice. They played Campbell. They played Hopkinton. There's your 6 losses. Yeah. You know, with what you were saying earlier, how, I'm number 13th, but our losses came to St. Thomas and Gilford.
That's a Conant team that's a little bit – and I don't want to sit here – I'm not going to slander Gilford boys and say they haven't played anybody.
Oh, don't worry. I got notes for that.
But they've played some good teams.
Right.
They haven't played a lot of close games.
Nope, handful.
You know what I mean? Like over the last handful of years, they haven't played a lot of close games. They've played some, but not a lot. So in a situation where momentum is huge, and in the second half, Conant had a lot of it, then Gilford didn't necessarily know how to break it or take it away. And obviously, Rick's a great coach. He's been doing it long, long time. it only benefits the other team if you can keep a team like that close.
Yeah.
Because if you're going into the fourth quarter and the game is close,
you got a chance.
Exactly. I text Devin. What did I text you after the game was over?
I
was shocked that Jalen didn't get to 1,000 long before this playoff game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he's a 4-year varsity player.
Right.
With that size, he's a 4-year varsity player.
Yeah.
With the scores they
spread
exactly,
that ball out really well.
Yeah.
And,
but
and
in 4 years, you would think in those blowout games that would have happened 2 months ago.
But
I see. This is where I disagree. I think that's
here we go.
The reason why I disagree is that's where I think good coaching.
Oh yeah, they
into play.
absolutely spread the ball around.
Because
I was just a little bit shocked that it hadn't happened before that.
I was surprised it hadn't happened before that as well. But when you're blowing teams out by 30,
he's sitting the fourth quarter.
Congrats. You got 20 points.
Exactly.
Great. You got 17 points, 10 rebounds.
Yeah.
Great night.
Absolutely.
Well done. And then at the end of the season, you're like, wow, I thought it would have been a lot closer. And I don't know if he sat out a little bit this year due to some tweaking injuries or something like that.
I know there were a handful of games that he would get into foul trouble and have to sit, probably more so than Rick would have wanted him to.
Right.
But it's the same thing. Like if you're in those blowouts, you're not playing your top guys as often. So unless he's going to get the first half and a little bit of the third quarter before the bench guys go in to finish it up. I was like, when Devin said he's 3 or 5 points away from 1,000, I'm like, oh, I thought you were talking about the younger Reese.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, cool, that's cool. They're both going to get to 1,000. Like, that's fantastic. Yeah. And then he made the shot for 1,000. I'm like, I would have thought that would have happened a long time ago based on the fact that, like, when he was a freshman, sophomore, like, yeah, he was probably one of the better players on the team, and they had a lot of really good players, too. But, like, he's probably...
Had his older brother.
You know what I mean? Like, he's probably... exactly.
Who was doing that? I mean...
But he probably wasn't sitting as much in those blowouts at freshman, sophomore, beginning of junior year as he was like end of junior year, senior year.
But that's where I think that's why I think these guys are such complete players.
Oh yeah.
In those blowout games, they become the facilitators versus
going
me,
to get
me.
Yep.
And that's what makes that team, I think, super
strong. And that's what makes them that's why they're the 1 seed.
Yeah.
And that's why they've done what they've done. They're a really good team.
Super unselfish.
Yep.
Super unselfish.
And I think in those blowout wins, they do a lot of really good things, obviously, to get to that. But when you're getting into the playoffs, obviously they're battle tested. They've won 3 championships in a row. Like they've played close games. I'm not going to sit here and say they haven't. But of late, I think that it's going to benefit the other teams playing them because they've played tougher for 32-minute stretches.
Right.
Do we know who they're playing?
They have Hopkinton.
Yep.
Hopkinton in the semis. Huh?
Hopkinton in the semis.
That'll be a great game.
But, to go back to what you were saying about, him not playing the full game, getting 20 points, that's awesome. But off of that, I want to say that's what, and you guys just kind of touched on it, is what makes Gilford that much better, because the fact that they can take out their top player who just scored 1,000 points, and they're still going to add another 15 on the board.
Yeah.
The fact that their depth is there. Rick brings up JV players, and the JV players.
Who was the freshman?
Sleeper.
That kid was on fire.
He was hitting
in the
threes
first half.
like it was in practice.
Yep.
And apparently, coach just threw him in there because he was like, "Hey, you were doing well in practice yesterday. Go try it."
Yep.
Talk about just being like.
They're a really good program. They're a really good program for a reason. You're not a 1 seed on a fluke. You're not a continued 1 seed on a fluke. Yep. You don't win back-to-back championships on a fluke. Like, they're a really good program with players top to bottom, varsity to JV, that can play. They're good. I've seen them play. They're good. They're really, really good. I went down and watched Hopkinton beat us. Absolutely beat us. That was a 10 or 12 point game at halftime. Hopkinton didn't miss for the first 5 minutes of the third quarter. Layups, mid-range, three-pointers, you name it. They shot lights out for 5 minute stretch. At halftime, we were down like 10 to 12. You looked up, we were down 22.
Yeah.
22.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of teams. Like I saw St. Thomas, and they have some size, and I've seen Gilford and Belmont. Obviously, Belmont's not in. But I've seen all 4 of those teams in the Final Four. Hopkinton's going to give Gilford trouble.
Yeah.
Hopkinton has 3 guys who are going to match up size-wise with the 2 Reeses and Cheek. They do. They absolutely do. Hopkinton has length and size, and they go down low and they play down there. They're physical. They have a point guard who can move, get up and down the floor. He can shoot. That's going to be a really, really good game.
Yeah.
I think if Gilford gets past Hopkinton, it's theirs. It's theirs.
Now,
I think Hopkinton's probably. I mean, Mascoma can shoot. Mascoma can absolutely shoot. I don't necessarily know. I think that game will be good too. I think
they're playing St. Thomas.
They're
right?
playing St. Thomas.
St. Thomas is tough.
I think whoever gets out of
telling you.
I think whoever gets out of the Gilford Hopkinton, whichever one that is, if it's Gilford or Hopkinton, whoever wins that game wins the championship.
I see it. I'm going to disagree with you again.
Oh my gosh,
It's good.
This is what we want.
undisputed.
I'm telling you. I watched St. Thomas play Belmont, and what impressed me about St. Thomas is they do all the little things super well. They don't have much size, but my God, do they move the ball incredibly well. They see the floor really well. They defend phenomenally well, and that's, to me, that's good. That's ultimately what's going to be the deciding factor in that.
Yep.
I didn't see Mascoma play this year.
Me neither.
But I know they're tough. It's Mascoma.
Yeah,
They're tough.
and really, you don't get to the final. I mean, what Hopkinson's got a first-year coach. So does St. Thomas, and rightfully, but you don't get to the
St.
final.
Thomas has a first-year coach,
but he's been
coaching.
exactly.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Forever.
First year for St. Thomas.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, you know what it is. Like, you don't get to the Final Four and not have good coaching.
Right.
Like every one of these teams that are in the Final Four, they've been coached well to get to this point.
Right.
It's anybody. I mean, obviously Gilford's at the top, and then the other three have a shooter's chance.
But
I just think that with watching Mascoma can shoot, they have a little bit of size. I think that whoever wins that slug match between Gilford and Hopkinton, unless it's an instance where Hopkinton knocks off Goliath and then basically just kind of like relaxes.
You're out of your mind, Dan.
You know,
You're
and
out of your
relaxes
mind.
into
I'm telling
the
you.
championship. You know what I mean? Like, I think it could be something like that. Could
Sure.
potentially happen.
Sure.
But I think that Gilford Hopkinton game is going to be like it was a couple years ago when Gilford, I think it was Jalen, blocked the Hopkinton shot
Yep.
at the end of the game that gave Guilford the championship last
We
year
did
and the
that
year
game.
before.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
Like I think
Sorry. They
it's
all
going
blend
to be
together.
I think it's going to be something like that. I think that game's going to come down to the wire. And Hopkinson's got a solid team.
Yeah.
They've got the foreign exchange kid who can absolutely fill it up. I mean, they're solid. I mean, all four of these teams are solid. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I upset the other half of the bracket.
It's all good.
You know what I mean?
But this game against Conant showed the whole division that Guilford can lose.
It showed they're vulnerable.
Yeah, and
it showed they're vulnerable.
And
it doesn't show that they can lose because they had to be tough at the end of the game and hit that shot.
But
they're vulnerable. Yes.
yes, and to some people in the division, the I don't even know how else to say this, but the thought of there's blood in the water could be said.
It
You
could
know,
be.
because
It could be, but
Conant,
It very well could go the other way, like you had said earlier.
But I was
If you're
going
a
to say,
fly
I'm
on the
going
wall to
to
Gilford.
pull my flip of the coin here, go in the other way. But what I was going to say was, not everybody's going to look at Conant and say, oh, they're not number 8. Everyone's just going to look at that as face value and say, number 8 almost upset number 1. What's wrong with Guilford?
I don't.
I disagree.
I'm going to also disagree.
I disagree with my own statement, but I'm saying that
But
there are
to
people
that-
out there
to that point
who are going to say
there are people
that.
out there that are going to go, oh my God, Guilford's
Guilford's
they're
off.
susceptible.
Guilford's over.
Right,
Guilford's
but
done.
Guilford probably had a bad quarter,
Right.
and that's it.
Right.
And that's the trouble with buying into
Right.
those things, because a team may come in, and I agree with you. Hopkinton's gonna play them really well, but
yeah.
Hopkinton's not gonna go into that game going, "Oh my God, we got them." This is
No,
they're-
absolutely not.
We figured it out, because Guilford's gonna show up and go, "Surprise, we had a bad quarter. That was it."
And
But now
realistically, Guilford had a bye.
Right.
They had a bye in the first round.
Yep.
So how many days off did they have?
From what I understand, none. But go on.
Well, obviously they
Competitive games.
practiced.
I was just saying.
You know what? They
Competitive
they
games.
practiced. Yes, we're not going to sit here and say they played their last game of the season and then sat
I said,
around.
Coach
and
A
waited.
didn't
No,
say
they're
go
not.
to Disney World, come back on Tuesday.
They're not doing that. But like
they went skiing.
they had a bad
Kinda
they had a rough second half.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were rusty into the first half, and you could see the lack of playing that first round kind of hurt them a little bit. Like they had a little bit of a rougher second half. So you don't want to sit here and be like, oh, well, they didn't play for a week, because that might have been a little bit of it. But like St. Thomas didn't. They had a bye too. And they were okay. They took care of it. But like we talk about strength of schedule. I mean, if you're going to have a rest going into your playoff game and you don't necessarily play, it could go two different ways.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, Rick probably did lay into him a little bit.
Whether you're taking my notes right off my sheet.
whether they had practiced, yesterday or tomorrow. I mean, and those Gilford boys, as soon as they got into the locker room, were probably looking at each other, and they were just like, oh, we survived.
What happened?
We survived. Yeah. And that's a good thing. As much as we want to sit here and say that Gilford's vulnerable and they haven't played a lot of close games, that helps them.
You're killing me, man.
Go for it.
No, I was going to say, literally on my piece of paper, and I'll show you it. It's right here. It says, however, in big, bold letters, knowing that coaching state, it's not bold letters, but still.
It's all caps.
All caps, underline. Exclamation. However. I was going to say, knowing that coaching staff.
Aquilano?
Yes, Aquilano.
Do you know Aquilano?
Yeah, I do.
Do you know Ben Hill?
I do.
Do you know?
Can you stop? Knowing that coaching staff, that next practice, whether, as you just said, Dan, on Saturday or Monday or whenever, that's going to be the toughest practice that these players have ever had, because Rick was not happy. He walked by me, and I went, hey, and he just kind of gave me a look, and I was like, because I was going to talk to him about something, and I'm like, you know what, it can wait till Monday.
Yeah.
Good game, But my point in saying that, though, is going into these semifinals and these finals, you're going to see a Guilford that I don't think we've seen in years, because they're going to come out stronger. They're going to come out.
They're going to be focused. It's about focus. It
this
really
is
is what it comes down to.
Recover from saying blood in the water.
Hey, realistic.
But it does come down to focus. It does come down to, and again, a seasoned playoff competitive team is just going to go back to basics. They're going to go back to the things that work well for them, and then just hammer that stuff home.
It's hard to get a word in with these guys, just so you know. That's
why
I was just like, stop saying what you're saying.
And we talked about it. We talked about it with Prospect Mountain girls, right? How they were like wanting to get to the Final Four, and that's like when you turn it on to coach. If you're a team that always gets there, Gilford's a team that's been there for the last 3 years.
It's expected at this
point. But now Final Four is not good enough. When you go 18-0 and you've done the things that they've done to get here, they want to get to the championship. They want to get to the top of the mountain, plant the Gilford Golden Eagle flag there. How many of those guys on that basketball team were on that football team that lost to the semis?
Bunch of them.
You know what I mean? They now know what that feeling
what
is.
It feels to lose.
Not necessarily lose, but like you were the favorite in that semifinal.
Yeah.
Seeding-wise, like we talked about at the very beginning of the show, they were the favorite seed. They should have gone to the championship game, and they lost. And now here they play this little bit of a close game, and that little bit of doubt might creep in to some of those, the handful of guys that were like, oh, we had this really good regular season for football, and this is what happened. We had this really good regular season for basketball, and here we go. And like some of these guys, like they played football their whole lives, never won.
Yeah,
they were good, never won. But like they've had some basketball success,
right?
But yeah, you want to go out on top if you're a senior. Reese, Cheek, some of the other handful of guys that are there that are like, we want to go and put that, I don't know what they do in the spring. We want to put that last exclamation point on our 4-year career here at Gilford and be like, we were the best class to ever walk through.
I mean, and think about it that way. You were mentioning like Jalen, he was freshman varsity, sophomore varsity. He's only won championships.
Yep.
And you could say that COVID year was a 50-50, whatever.
Well, it was them and whoever they were going to go to.
Yeah, it's still a win.
Monadnock?
Was it Monadnock or Hopkinton?
No, it was Monadnock.
But either way, it's a win. It doesn't.
That was 3-4 years ago. What do you do after?
Right.
Basically.
And so point is, though, is Jalen Reese, Sam Cheek, these guys who are 4-year varsities, they could potentially walk out of Gilford graduating as a 4-time champion.
Yep.
Which hasn't unheard of. It hasn't happened in boys basketball since what, Conant? A handful of years ago?
Yeah.
When they had the beard kid?
Yep.
I mean, that was 15 years ago the last time I think that a school went on a run like Gilford's done.
Right.
And I don't think it was a run like this where, did they lose a game last year?
I don't think so.
No.
So, I mean, they're in a 2-year stretch where they haven't lost. Like, I think Conant dropped a handful of games here and there, but when they got to the playoffs, nobody wanted to play them.
Right.
It's kind of like that Gilford soccer banner in the gym that says, 133 games to 0 or something, like to none or something.
Yeah,
you know what I'm trying to...
Yeah,
yeah,
but
like...
that banner, though, is they went 133 games without a loss.
Gotcha.
So
that doesn't include ties.
They were 120 and however many ties and no losses. But
probably 3.
But still.
No, they have a number of ties in there.
I was going to say. Then I think it's a double digits in the tie.
But that was that 10-year stretch.
They
won 10
yeah.
championships in a row.
And never went up to Division II.
You know, they didn't make schools do that back then.
No, Pinkham would have never made that happen anyway.
It was the idea. Anyway.
We're taking jabs.
I had to tell Dave right now.
Anyways, no, I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think it's still Guilford's championship to lose. I understand what you guys are saying about Hopkinton and everything, and I think it's going to be a good
Just
game.
me over here on Hopkinton.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad. I think it's going to be a game.
I think it's going to be a great
You stay
game.
over there.
The only knock is I wish for 2 things. One,
that DPPG was covering it.
Yes. I wish it wasn't NFHS because it's a pain in the ass.
What do you mean? $10, $11.
It's not worth it to me. And I wish that Goffstown wasn't so far away.
Oh,
because those are two very good games that, as a high school sports fan, you want to go and watch that.
For semifinal games, this is
worth
the price of admission.
You got the top 4 seeds. That's what you want.
Yeah.
Right.
And you have 2 really good games that are coached well, that are going to be defensive battles. We've got size. We've got shooters. We've got athleticism. Like, this is what you want in a semifinal, and it's in Goffstown.
Yeah.
So it's like...
What time are the games?
7:30 for the Guilford game. I want to say 5 or
it's probably
5:30.
It's probably 5 or...
Right.
So it's
darn, we have a hockey game. Shucks.
But you know what I mean?
I'm going to go to the games.
I was going to ask you to announce hockey, but okay.
I'm torn. I'm torn.
Playoff hockey.
Unfortunate.
Yes, we'll get there. Well, I think that hockey game is going to be.
What are you talking about? Kearsarge, Plymouth versus Beaumont, Guilford.
10-0 Guilford.
Oh my goodness! What's the under/over on it?
10. Take the over. I'm not a betting man, but I'm gonna go on that one.
So, just a real side note. Speaking of betting, he reached out to me. He pulled a U.
Nice.
He's like, "Hey, what's your picks for the Daytona 500?"
Wow.
I'm like,
I stopped taking advice from you.
What? What are you talking about? You were asking for the biggest unpredictable races.
Give me your top 5 drivers in a race.
I will give him credit.
Every time I get his top 5, I bet his top 5 never win.
Oh, really? I haven't made the bets yet, but I bet
Who's winning the race today?
I would say it's either Hamlin, Logano. My long shot would be Wallace.
Plus 800, I think.
That's what this jacket is, by the way, for anybody out there going, what the heck is Devin wearing? This is the 23 Daytona 500 jacket. NASCAR.
65th annual race? Or?
Mm-hmm. Just in case anybody out there is wondering what the Daytona 500 is.
It's a bicycle race.
It is.
They must live under a rock.
I know, it's the Super Bowl of auto racing.
It's the first race of the year, and it's the Super Bowl.
That's what they call it. It's not me. It's not me.
Pointing out
Listen,
the obvious.
It's not me. Our biggest race is number 1.
It's not
and
me.
That's the first race of the year. It's our biggest race. Because where was NASCAR born? Daytona Beach.
Was it?
I don't know, Prohibition, really. But, I just feel...
I mean, yes.
They got to just do a better job at...
Oh, my gosh. We're going to switch to NASCAR now? Viewership dropped.
No,
if
we're not.
You gotta have a good end, too. Don't get me wrong. I do watch Daytona more often than anything else, and we do our fantasy football draft on a NASCAR, like our seeding. We do that.
Makes
I
sense.
give out drivers, and this is who they are, and whatever order they finish is our draft order. But that's just a normal race. It's like Delaware or New Jersey or just a random track. It's not Daytona.
He's showing his knowledge of NASCAR.
It's not Daytona.
New Jersey.
No NASCAR in New Jersey.
But
I knew that.
But you start with such a big event, and then you have your championships, and they're just slow. It's not built up the same way.
We own 38 of the next 39 weeks, Sundays, just saying.
Do we?
I mean, baseball starts
You say
soon.
we.
NASCAR does.
NASCAR owns what?
38 of the next 39 weeks consecutively.
I'm going to disagree with that.
Nope.
Because you know what's coming up in 2 weeks.
They got one off week.
F1, baby.
Oh, no. I thought he was going to say the trade safe card show.
You know what's coming up?
I was
Anyways,
waiting to plug that, but
Don't worry, I got you.
I didn't do
Who'd
it
you
last
say?
week. Sorry.
Who'd you say?
Logano,
Yeah.
Hamlin, and my long shot would be Wallace. That's your top three.
Logano. It's plus 1,200.
Logano always does well at these plate tracks if he doesn't get turned around on the last lap. All right. Talk about the prospect game while you bet some money over there. Let me talk about the prospect game here. Close first half. I think it was 21-20 at halftime. And then Hopkinton did exactly what I thought one of the teams was going to do. They started the third with either 7 or 8 unanswered points. And at that point, more or less game was over.
Yeah.
Hate to say that. I know the prospect girls out there are probably going, Devin, we had a better shot. They got it to 15 and then cut it back down to 9. And, that was it. Prospect just kind of got tired. And they played well, but they were just really tired at the end. And Hopkinton was literally the coach there. I can't think of his name. The Hopkinton girls coach, clearly a seasoned vet because he is rotating girls every 2 or 3 minutes. And it was like, okay, you guys are going to go out. We get up to 15. Okay, you come off. Now we're going to let them come to 9. Okay, you guys will go back out 15. It was perfectly executed by Hopkinton. And Prospect did their best to try and combat it, but that's that.
Well, you run a team with depth.
Right.
And if you can't, and it's hard to cut into a lead.
Right.
Like you said, Hopkinton's coached well. They're a program that's done it for a handful of years. If they're not, they might bend a little bit, but they're not going to break. And they're playing this. We can talk about strength of schedule again. They played some tough teams, and they have depth, and they're probably going 8-9 girls deep.
Right.
Prospect Mountain is 8 girls deep.
Yeah. If that.
Exactly, if that. So it's tough to combat that. Plus, in a playoff game, you're a little bit. Things speed up a little bit. You're trying to, when you're cutting into the deficit, you're probably playing a little bit more aggressively on defense. You're in foul trouble.
I was going to say Ella Smith fouled out with 3 or 4 minutes to go in the fourth.
Well,
that's huge.
On a team of 6 or 7 deep is now 5 deep. You're in that battle, and Prospect Mountain, they had a good year.
Yeah,
they had a really good year. Obviously
they're going to be a tough team.
Yeah.
Here these next few years.
And obviously, they're at home this weekend and gearing up for spring, and a little bit upset about how their season ended, this weekend. But like we talked about earlier, it's not the end. The way the season ends in the playoffs doesn't determine a good or bad year. It's just at the time you're just like, this is just not an enjoyable experience.
Right.
And you go in either direction. You either use that to get better, or you're just like, oh well, it was a good year and it is what it is.
Right. I mean, and it's like I said, it was a good game. In my notes, I said it was a good game. They played well. Prospect played well. Hopkinton just was able to, again, in that third quarter, have an explosive third, and then that was it. That was really it. They were in, I think I said with 2 minutes to go, they're in the driver's seat. Prospect used their final timeout. Hopkinton had the double bonus. Hopkinton had 4 timeouts. They were more or less in control of that game at that point, and
yeah,
you don't want to warm up the bus, but in that case, it was a good way to warm up the bus.
Yeah. Was that game at Prospect Mountain too?
Yeah, and it was packed. Both teams showed up.
Hopkinton
awesome.
does travel well, regardless of sport.
And the viewership count was good too. It actually rivaled that Gilford game. Viewership.
That Gilford game was. Conant to Gilford's not a close ride either.
No, but Conant traveled well too.
A lot of those teams do. A lot of those schools do travel well.
Right.
But if you're in the playoffs, you're crazy not to travel well.
Exactly.
Even at Hopkinton, there was still a decent. For the boys' game, there was a decent Interlakes crowd there. Not great. It wasn't to Conant ability or Conant size, but it was it was decent.
Right.
Hopkinton's not a far trek, but I can't. I watched the Conant Belmont game on the YouTube, and you couldn't see the crowd, so I didn't necessarily
couldn't hear them either.
But
we were told for that game, if you wanted to get a seat, you had to get there crazy early, because I went to a playoff game there when Conant was in that stretch of
just beat
dominance.
Everybody, yeah.
And I remember getting in there, and the only 2 seats left half hour before the game were crunched in up against a wall, sitting like this going, okay, I can't move.
COVID.
Yeah, well, no, it's way
Pre-COVID,
before
yeah.
COVID, but it was just one of those things where you're like, I really can't move.
Right.
Yeah.
We're just packed in there, and it was insanely loud. Great home court advantage for them.
Right.
No question about that. But
No, I mean, that gym reminds me of, because I went to Belmont Middle School's gym.
Yeah.
Where it's very much like the old
Super
school, here's the court, give them 4 rows on each side. We have an auditorium as well. Done.
Yeah.
That's your gym.
Yeah.
It's not like the Gilfords and the Laconias of the world where it's like, here's your court, and then we'll give you
It's
15
like
rows.
It's like a college-sized gym.
Yeah. But no, it was, I watched that Belmont game online too from a broadcaster point of view, basic live stream, but that's okay.
He should have been at the Interlakes Hopkinton game, but
I took the night off. It was funny because what was that, Valentine's Day too?
No days off.
yeah,
right?
I know, right? He
No
takes
days off.
the days off. You can't cover semifinal, boys. Hockey's a regular season. There's nothing else going on, and spring doesn't start for a month. But he needs a day off at playoff time.
Getting ready for NASCAR.
I know, right? Foley and I are on the same page.
He's getting ready for NASCAR.
Don't worry, the
I
guys,
placed my bets though.
the
by
guys,
way.
the guys,
know how you
the
do.
guys knew. The guys knew that you were taking the day off. They were a little bit upset, but you'll
I
make it up.
wasn't driving to Hopkinton.
You'll just have to make it up to him in the spring. That's all.
We'll see.
What if we did a bootleg broadcast from
Where are
Goffstown
you going with this?
on Wednesday for the semis?
How would you do a bootlegged?
Just do body cam.
No. we're done. We're done with this
Just
idea.
put a
Have a
GoPro on.
hat?
Yeah, just put a GoPro on the hat and just stand
Right.
on the baseline.
We're done with this idea.
I could.
You sit in the parking lot from the trailer.
No.
You just call the game and just Foley and I'll just zoom in, zoom out.
And would zooming in be like walking down the bleachers?
I just
Hey,
stand,
could you get closer?
I'll
Sure.
just stand on the baseline, yeah.
He'll be on one end. I'll be on the other.
Oh my god.
And you just flip back and forth
Think
between
of the
cameras.
action
I know,
shots,
right?
yeah.
Good lord.
So what's next, Tim?
No, I was gonna say we're not doing that. The NFHS network is going to be covering the games according to the NHIAA, so we respect that, and that's just me covering my bases off of that crazy idea.
Is it crazy?
So let's also talk about
We've watched NFHS broadcast. That's not crazy.
real quick. Oh my gosh. Real quick, I got some game notes from the BG game last night from Coach Parent, which sometimes I bring these up, sometimes I don't, but this seemed like it was one that needed to be done. Last night, I'm just going to read his note real quick. Last night's game at Lebanon Stevens Mount Royal Academy, 8-1 win for BG. Notable moments. First goal for Sean Sargent.
Nice.
Goals for Aiden Stafford and Chris Port.
Hold on. Sean Sargent scored his first goal.
Yes.
You the man, Sean. You the man. Well
I was
done.
expecting it, and you weren't there. But
No.
anyways.
I have Sean in class right now, so
Yeah, so there you go.
I'm pumping him up. Well done.
A couple goals for Sean Ellis from Gilford, 5 assists for Evan Guerin. And then, of course, we have their senior night game on Wednesday at 5. And he
Take
said,
the over. Hammer
he
the
said,
over.
we invite everybody down to watch the seniors' last home game against Kearsarge Plymouth. So, and I do as well. As much as I love viewership counts, come to Merrill Fay Arena and support these guys
And
in person.
hammer the over.
Nope. So, anyways, they also played on Wednesday Pembroke Campbell. Before we talk about that game, because we have a little bit I want to talk about that, let's talk about Laconia Winnisquam Interlakes. They had the... if one day Dan just disappears, we're going to have plenty of content to explain why.
Don't you worry. I got 2 senior guys on that squad, and I chat with them quite frequently.
He is pushing that canceled line. You know,
Cancel culture?
Cancer culture, I know.
I
right?
talk to those 2 senior guys all the time. And,
FCC, call it up.
And they've been battling, and they've had, you're a winless team. You're 17, 18 years old. You could easily hang it up. They're the only 2 seniors on the team. I applaud them for still going out there and battling hard, because some of these scores aren't that close. They lost to Kingswood 6-0, and Kingswood basically took their foot off the gas pedal midway through the second period. That game could have easily gotten ugly. I watched them play BG a couple times. It's not how you, we were sitting here talking about Gilford earlier, and how those senior guys want to go out on top. These guys are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. They're going to go winless in a program where 2 years ago it was all Interlakes guys and they were competitive and stuff like that. And for those two guys to still come out every day, they had 11 kids against Kingswood the other day. For Austin and Zach to do what they've been doing all year, I mean, it takes a toll on you after a while. And as a coach who's coached a team that only won 1 or 2 games in a year, it takes its toll as an adult. As a high school kid who could easily just, all right, I'm not coming in today. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. As quickly as it is to join a team when things are going well, it's just as easy to hop off the ship when it is sunk. Yep. And it's been a tough stretch for Laconia and Winnisquam Interlakes for the entire time that we've been in a program together. And for those two guys, I was there for their senior day. I was absolutely not missing that. They're two really great kids that work really hard, and it's just an unfortunate way to end the year. And they play hard, but it's one of those things. Like, they just don't have the numbers. They don't have some of the talent that some of these other programs have. It's just been a tough couple of years, not just this year altogether.
Yeah. So they played Kingswood senior night, 6-0 loss. They played at John Stark, Hopkinton, Hillsborough, Deering. Yes, that's the name of the full team. Then, according to, I hate to say this seems like the score's wrong, but 11-7 loss.
It's a baseball score.
I was going to say, it seems too high for hockey, but that's okay. And I'm not saying that it's like a Laker, whatever. It just seemed like, I also
both
did
teams
these.
gave up a lot of goals.
I was going to say, I did these notes at like 1 a.m. last night, so maybe
I'm sure there was a couple empty netters in there. The goalie wasn't, in,
But no, so I just wanted to give the Lakers love because I realized that the Pembroke Campbell Belmont Gilford game, we're about to talk about some tomahawk moves. And
not great sportsmanship.
And I figured that was going to probably overshadow, so I didn't want to not acknowledge the Lakers.
Oh, absolutely.
By the way, it's in the works to have Mr. Keenan join us here on the show at one point.
Love me. So, I love Big A. That kid's fantastic.
He might be joining us shortly. He had to take a quick trip to Maine this morning, so that's why he wasn't able to come on this morning. That's okay. I hear Maine's beautiful.
Occasion.
I was going to say, Maine's nice this time of year, right?
It's gorgeous every time of the year.
But anyways, so let's talk about Belmont Gilford, Pembroke Campbell. Going into this game, there's the rivalry between these two schools. Belmont Gilford, Berlin Gorham, always a good rivalry game. Belmont Gilford, Pembroke Campbell, good rivalry game as well, but a little bit more physical. There's a little bit of a history there.
Yep.
And Pembroke Campbell, I think, was second or third, so we knew it was going to be a good game. BG put up 4 goals, shut Pembroke Campbell out, but it wasn't done. 1, 2, 3, 4 were done. It was a close game. They played well. Then it started to get a little chippy, and it was. There was a couple moments, even the Gilford kids, because I substitute teach at Gilford, a couple of Gilford kids were like, you called it, you said this, and then it happened. Because Belmont Gilford, one of their goals was a shorthand goal. They're one of the only teams in the state I've seen score when they're down a man. Yeah. And I was like, well, watch these guys. They're on the penalty kill, score. I'm like, okay, there you go. And then I mentioned, and it might have been a broadcaster's curse, I'm like, these guys usually are a little bit more physical. There's little frustrations and tempers, and then boom. Yep. Without getting into numbers or anything like that, just there was a situation where 2 players collided. BG player went down, gets up, kind of pushed him a little bit just as like a general hockey thing, and then sportsmanship went out the window with one of the pack players. And again, tempers, emotions. I'm not going to sit here and say it was right, but I also get a heat of the moment. Things happen.
It's never right.
It's never right.
Never
no,
right.
I'm not saying it is right,
right,
but I'm also not going to sit there and say, "What the heck, dude? You're better than that." I get it.
From a broadcast standpoint, you're not
right.
going to. But
right.
Looking back on it, it's never right.
No,
never.
I agree.
The kid lost his head. Again, for those that don't know, he took a stick and basically whacked this player over the head with it, and that's just
from a coach's standpoint, that's awful. It's unacceptable. Can't happen, regardless of what was said, what happened, whatever.
Right.
From a broadcaster's point of view, from a business point of view, you're getting viewership right there.
My phone started blowing up with viewership.
As bad as that is, right?
Right.
You're you have to show that to the powers that be. You have to show that.
Right.
Sure.
Not that we're going to sit here and condone like, oh, the only way you're going to get seen is if you do some unsportsmanlike act.
Yeah, don't do that.
But as for the viewership of it, you're getting your product out there to the people. And now you might necessarily be pushing, because how many times do we have games where something happens and it's my word and the kid's word versus the other kid and the other coach's word, and the game's not recorded, or if it is, it's the kid, it's a 14 or 15-year-old freshman, sophomore who volunteers or has the broken ankle or something like that, and the camera's pointed to the ground, and you don't necessarily have
lovely grass.
You know what I mean? Exactly. Like now that might be necessarily pushing.
Right.
For the 1% of the time that it happens,
Right.
you now have something like that on evidence that says like this is exactly what happened. You don't have to worry about it.
Right.
The other 99% of the time, nothing ever happens. Games go the way they go. And it's good. Now you're just basically being like, all right, maybe all games should be recorded. Now in 2023, there's no reason that you can't record a game.
Well, I mean,
so that if something like this happens, it's easy to just be like, okay, number 10 did this. This is what we're going to do to discipline number 10, as opposed to be like, I sat there and be like, oh yeah, this happened all game long. Did you talk to an official? Yeah, he's 90 yards away. There's nothing you could do, as opposed to just being like, okay, well, here we go. Now
I can think of an Interlake's homecoming soccer game where the ball went over the goal line, goalie grabbed it, and they said no goal.
Yeah. Luckily, we came out on top of
it. Official says
a different piece of
VAR. Official says no goal. We have a camera behind the goal.
Or if we're gonna really do anything, because that one didn't affect us. At Prospect Mountain, we tie 1-1. They take our second goal off, which would have put us up 2-0.
We were at that game, right?
With under 5 minutes left. The official at the bleachers calls the goal off. We end up tying. What? It didn't hurt us. That didn't hurt us because we got to where we were in a decent spot playoff-wise. But at the end of the day, that's a win for us. That got taken away because the official wanted to take it off.
Why does it seem like we follow controversy, or controversy follows us?
Because you're recording it.
Okay.
If you're not,
Devin.
Well, yeah, but if you're not recording that and you don't have any video evidence of it, it's just one of those telltale stories that just get old.
Hey, did you hear what happened the other night? Hey,
exactly. And it goes along, and you can't physically see it.
But the bigger point of this whole thing is it's horrific sportsmanship.
Absolutely.
And now, granted, I'm not the AD, I'm not the principal, I'm not the coach, but that kid isn't playing at all moving forward. Now, that's me.
Yeah. There are policies in place for different schools, and
that was, and you said it was just a 5-minute major penalty.
5-minute major, 3 minutes to go, so he was done in the third period.
But a five, and this is where my hockey knowledge is non-existent.
I did hear it was
a 5 minute.
If it's a game misconduct, then it's comparable to being ejected.
Okay,
in basketball.
that was going to
be to a red card.
That was going to be my question. So if it's a normal 5-minute major, I don't necessarily know. Probably realistically, the coach probably isn't putting that kid back in if he's able to.
Right.
If it's just a normal penalty, yeah, they can go back in.
I was going to say 5 minutes.
But if it's, I wasn't sure if that was. Right. Yeah, I wasn't sure if that's an ejectable penalty. Whereas in our situation, you're already NHIA has already got you at a game for an athlete, so you already have that, and then whatever the school wants to put on top of it. So where it happened 3 minutes left, and it's not necessarily. I didn't know if it's an ejection or not. That kid may or may not be able to go back into, senior day for them, realistically, if that's, if he is that old. But, it's one of those things that if, we're this late in the year, that kid may or may not be missing the first round of the playoffs, depending on the situation.
And it depends, obviously, on the NHIA rule book. It depends on what the schools have in place. I've had BG players get into a fight before, and they sit 3 games. Or however many games, and that's coming from the school, not necessarily the NHIAA.
You have your one NHIA rule that says if you're ejected, you have to miss one, and then the schools can obviously impose something harder than that. They can't take that one game away, but they can add additional.
We had a player who got a red card in the soccer season, and NHIAA, you're sitting the next game, and we sat the kid the following game, so he missed 2 games. Based on that, and that for us, that was warranted. That was really what should have happened.
Right. But as you said, sportsmanship out the window, completely uncalled for. As a broadcaster, I can understand it. I don't agree with it. I'm not going to sit here and be like, do more. Like, no.
Understand this though. Like we know this, and you know this just from being a broadcaster as well. But as coaches, look, so much stuff is said on the ice, on the field, on the court. The amount of trash talking is unbelievable.
And especially if, like you had talked about, these two schools potentially being like rivals, because PG doesn't have a Lakes Region rival. They don't. They have Berlin-Gorham. They have Pembroke Campbell, and then maybe a team down south. So, and hockey kids play these guys all the same time.
I was going to say,
in 2023, in the way that social media is, that might not have been an issue that started on the ice. That could have been a previous game. It could be these two schools and kids getting at each other on Instagram or Snapchat,
I have
Facebook.
an example of that. Last winter, you might even remember this. Last winter during a holiday tournament, these two teams got into each other. There was a person got checked into the boards, and then all of a sudden they were going to play each other the next week, and instantly I caught wind of it on Instagram, social media. They were like, oh, murder mystery, we're going after them. Like, there was that fuel to the fire. And I saw it, and I immediately sent it to the coaches. Like, I was like, hey, just a heads up. And they took care of it. But you're right.
And as a coach, you don't know what happens. What happens on the field, but you never know what's said.
Right.
It's same thing outside of it. Like, sometimes the guys will be like,
how many times do you get your players who come to you and I'm like, dude, what did you say? Coach, I didn't say anything.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
You're right.
And
my guys are angels.
Yeah, and you always give them the same spiel. It's like, I was in your shoes at one point, too.
Yeah.
Like, we said stupid things on the field that made no sense. There was no reason to say it. You just say it in the heat of the moment. You're not supposed to. You shouldn't. But, like, now it's so different now than it was 5 years ago.
I mean,
you can look up anyone from any team and just be like, oh yeah, we're playing, Concord next week, and they go chirp at the best player, and then they wonder why we got absolutely smoked because you already lit the fire before you came through.
Right.
And like, teenagers are dumb. They are.
What?
They are.
Are you serious?
You can.
Wait a minute here.
Any parent out there is going to tell you that their kids do stupid things at times, and like that happens from time to time. So that situation could have been a game thing that was just boiling over. Pembroke Campbell probably thought that was a close-ish game.
No, I mean,
anything could have gotten to that point where that kid just was like, all right, I'm going to do this. To do it once, we could be like, okay, that was stupid. You shouldn't have done that. That was dumb. To do it second time and third time, that's probably going to end your season, regardless of how far you go, championship run or not. And realistically, that should fall. If they play, senior game and first round and get knocked out, that should be something that follows to another sport.
Yeah.
Realistically, because that's just. Yeah, it happened at hockey, but you should that one time, maybe two. Second or third time, I mean, you knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
The first time, we might give you the heat of the moment. Here's a 2-gamer just to send a message. But the second and third time, you knowingly were doing it that time. You can't use the heat of the moment as an excuse or whatever that kid may or may not have said as he bumped into you. But that's just an unreasonable act.
I mean, going back to what you were saying about, how these teams are playing with each other and things like that, I got a note from Rick Plum, one of the parents of a PAC player. He said, and I'll read a quote, there are 9 teammates playing from the New England Wolves U16 team that won the New Hampshire State Tournament and are going to Buffalo next month. Both goalies, Carson McGreevy and Liam Cripps, Aiden McKenzie, Nate Gerbig, Evan Guerin from BG, Caleb I still can't say his last name. Courter, Alex Hansen, Trevor Lemaire, and Cam Plum, all from PAC. So they all play on the same team, and they were playing against each other. So whether or not that means, Tempers were playing, obviously they're teammates, so there's probably a little different situation there. But they know each other. They know their styles. They know that. But then there's also, aside from the Tempers, there's that fun, of afterwards they're going to go to the Wolves practice and be like, dude, I got you. I poke checked you. I did this. I checked you hard into the boards. Oh, yeah, that was fun. Ha, ha, ha.
Right.
Exactly.
So
and
that's the good side of the way the world is right now.
And And it's just like, and it's like that in every sport. If you're in that AAU, it's so rare, especially in the locations that we are, to have just your guys play together. You have to. If you're going to play competitively, you have to have other towns and schools in that. And that doesn't, for the one bad act that we were talking about, you have a situation like that where, 90% of those guys or 95% of those guys would play together, and they're just like that was stupid. That shouldn't happen. And they're probably at Wolves. They're probably at Wolves practice now
to that
doing
point,
that
though,
stuff.
that the player involved isn't one of those kids, more than likely going on to play in these things. And the kid who was hit, assaulted, however you want to do that. I mean, but that's a legitimate concern that I think people have.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The second you take your your stick and you use that as an implement, that potentially could have ramifications beyond high school sports.
True. Crazy. That's crazy to think about. But no, I mean, overall that game was good, physical in a legal sense. Then that one moment happened, and yeah, it's weird because we bring up the broadcaster thing. Immediately when that happened, I just stopped. I'm pretty sure if you go back, I'm pretty sure I just said, whoa, 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 because you're not supposed to fight in high school hockey.
Right.
We're not going to sit in there and promote it.
Nope.
As much as in the back of my head I'm going, here we go. Like, at the same time, it's like, no, this is not good.
Right.
Because of the fact that, we're here, we're thinking of the kids. Like, yes, I get it in the sense of, like, heat of the moment. Don't agree with it. Don't promote it. But at the same time, it's kind of like I'm sitting there going, this kid is now going to sit a game, potentially more, depending on the severity of how the coaches view it. They could, he could be tossed from the team, depending on the situation. Dan's watching softball right now behind us.
Okay.
She had a nice gap double the other way.
I'm sitting here. You and I are like talking, and Dan's just like,
I'm listening.
Wow.
I'm listening.
No.
I can hear the cheers.
Yeah.
That's why I looked out. They rolled all the way to the wall.
But no, it's just, it was a crazy moment. I mean, and I made sure to remind people, hey, there's no fighting in high school hockey. Right. Tempers are flaring right now. That's understandable. These are high school kids. Like, I get it, but that's not. So as a broadcaster, I tried to cover my bases. We didn't show a replay of it.
Smart.
Like, we had people messaging going, why aren't you showing a replay? It's like,
you're not.
No need to.
It's like we're not, because then it seems like we're promoting it.
Right. I didn't watch, so I didn't.
know.
I can't. But I do have a question.
What? This should be good.
In an instance like that, where it's gonna, obviously it's gross, shouldn't happen.
Right.
And did anyone come off the bench from either side?
To like a bench clearing,
Not necessarily bench clearing,
but
did anyone? Was it just the guys on the ice that were basically breaking it up, or that pushing and shoving match, or whatever that generally happens when those things happen?
Yeah.
Did people come off the bench to get into that
No.
pushing and shoving thing? Because that's a completely other
Right.
situation in itself. Because now you're looking at potential suspensions for those guys who weren't doing anything, but you're coming out of your bench area to get into that.
You're
kind
entering
of
an
stuff.
active ice. Yeah, no, nobody did that.
Okay.
What the BG kid who got hit literally skated.
Oh, he just went down.
Yeah, he actually, it was surprising. He took it in the head and was like unfazed by it. But anyways, he just skated away. Like, one of his teammates kind of like pushed him. It was just like, hey, don't even. And the Pack player who did it immediately had, I don't even know if it's a captain or an alternate captain, somebody just came over and like bear hugged him. It was just like
from his team?
From his team.
Okay.
And he was already on the ice. Like, he was already just like, whoa, because they had realized, this is a penalty.
Yeah.
We're going to be now, we're already down by 4 goals. Now we're going to lose you for next at least 2 minutes. And then immediately the officials got involved, kind of just made sure
I didn't
to play
I didn't
peacekeeping.
expect
Yeah,
anything. I figured I knew the answer, but on the off chance, you just want to be sure, because they're teenagers, and you never know when something like that might happen.
But to that point, and I don't remember what team it was, but I did hear about a team earlier this season where that happened, where there was a fight and everybody on the ice piled in, and I don't know if anybody left the benches. I don't know if anything like that. I mean, I'd like to believe the coaches would be smart enough to kind of grab the collars of the players and just be like, no, do not. Maybe not literally grab the collars, but you know what I mean?
I would.
But, coaches would be smart enough to be like, nope, do not move.
Yeah.
But there was an all-in, how many guys? 10, 12?
It was probably close.
12,
10. It's
six,
probably 10.
6 per team, 7
because
with
the
goalies.
goalies probably aren't skating all the way over there to get into that scrap.
But still, you have 6v6. Now all of a sudden it's a 6 or 12 pile player pile.
And that's something that we always, anytime you go to an in-person rules review, regardless of sport, that's something they talk about all the time.
Right.
And, if you're coaching by yourself, you're in a little bit of a situation because like you're trying to control your bench, you're trying to get your guys off of a situation like that, and the officials, there's 2, so they're trying to break up the altercation, but at the same time they're being told get the numbers of all the kids who came off the bench or out of the dugout or whatever, because now they're got to be disciplined. And I've only had it wasn't to that situation, but we had an instance in a quarterfinal last spring where I didn't even know what happened. I was going to check on a guy that had just it was hurt. He had pulled something. It was in between innings, so our guys are coming off the field, the other team's coming on the field, and then there was a little verbal altercation, and like I'm looking at our guy on the field, and then all of a sudden I look up and I turn around. I'm like, what is going on? And my assistant coach, well, I was fortunate enough to have more than one, had a kid who was very upset with somebody else, and he was basically like picked him up off the ground. And he like asked me, he's like, where do you want him? I was like, dugout. I want everybody in the dugout.
Right.
And that was it. It was over, and the umpires did a really good job at funneling that out of there. But it's one of those things that it happens so rarely that they talk about it so often. But you're usually, and this is what we talked about with those games, like if you're fortunate enough to have an incident be recorded, it just helps everybody in the situation involved, because there's no telephone where it could kind of change from person to person to person.
I remember that quarterfinal. I think we had a GoPro on the
fence. You did
again, another controversial moment.
Cover it. Captured. But it's just one of those things.
Nobody's going to invite us to games anymore.
I'll take DPPG to every game I ever go to just for this instance. But it's the same thing. Like it happens so rarely, but as coaches, you're almost told to like prepare for it because it's
tempers flare.
Exactly. You're out there for the same reason. You want to win, and those two teams are close. Like you want to, granted, it's BG and then everybody else, but it's like at the same time, like you're trying to knock off, you're trying to be competitive, like you're trying to do everything you can. Like
there's a potential that could be a semifinal game, and that'll be
that will be
it's going to be tough.
That will be a 3-man call because you've already been hired for that game, just so you know.
But what's interesting about
just
it
a heads up, DPPG got that game.
the crowd in that game was almost unmanageable
at Merrill Fay.
At Merrill Fay, and just knowing people who were there and getting the stories and all that stuff the next day, fan control. All that stuff, particularly at a playoff game, is going to be interesting to see how that.
The good thing, though,
plays out.
if you're going to play the play devil's advocate, the good thing about that though is that it's going to be at PSU. Mm-hmm. It's a huge arena.
Yep.
There's plenty of
room. You'll do is at Merrill Fay, everyone's on the same side.
Exactly.
Right.
Whereas
PSU, you're going to separate it, so you have BG on one side. And
but PSU actually they split it down the middle, so you could sit on the bench side or the other side. Like it's not like us and them.
But if you're in that situation and NHIA is getting this knowledge going forward and knowing that this is what's happening, I don't
think they'll tweak it because they didn't with the Berlin game last year.
But there wasn't one of these types of situations.
No. But
But I get what you mean.
There's a lot of stuff between them.
And realistically, you're still basically hoping on if you're going in there in a normal jacket and you're not showing your support going in, you could go to either side regardless.
Sure. But the bigger point I wanted to make is come playoff time, and particularly if it's at PSU, you're gonna have administration at those games.
Oh yeah.
From both schools. Whereas
you should
mid-season game without any kind of controversy.
You have one AD.
You had one AD there, and that's all you got.
Which that night both home schools were on the road for playoffs.
Right.
So the actual ADs were not there. It was one of the.
It was a game. It was a game administrator.
Yeah, and the guy, and I won't throw his name out there, but he does a great job. And he was sitting in the middle of the two crowds. And actually, I think the former SRO of Gilford, then when that situation happened, moved into the middle. Like they were on their game.
But that's kind of where I'm getting at is that come playoff time, I think you'll see a lot more, of administrative presence.
Yeah.
Particularly at a playoff game. And if it's a semifinal game between the two, there are going to be a lot of bodies there.
Right. And the good thing also is with that, and this goes back to video, at PSU, us media are right behind the benches.
Right.
All the fans are usually on the other side, so there's plenty of, here I'm just filming the zone, but in the top corner is the student section, so when that issue happens, there's a good chance it's on video.
Right.
And
Plymouth has a nice arena.
I was gonna say, as much as I don't like getting the
my
emails
tuition money went to something
saying,
mine too.
as much as I don't like getting those emails saying, hey, can I have film of X time to time? Because it's just like, okay. It's good that we're there.
Yeah. Well, it's good that schools are investigating it the way they should, and they'll make their decisions however they need to, and that's what you got to do.
Right. So, anyways, Pembroke Campbell lost to Belmont Gilford 4-0.
Yep.
In the long-winded explanation of that game. I feel like we would be doing a disservice to Molten Borough if we didn't talk about how we covered them on Monday night. Dan and I called that games.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We had the doubleheader senior night, both against
Lisbon.
The
Panthers won regardless.
The Panthers versus the Panthers. Yeah, that was fun. So, yeah, the girls' game was close. The boys' game,
not close.
Not so much. But either way, good game up in Molten Borough. Great time up there. From our point of view, everybody there was fantastic. It was our first game covering at Molten Borough Academy, and it was seamless. The IT department, I walked in. I was like, hey, I'm looking for so-and-so. He was there. He got us on the network. They created their own network for us.
Nice.
He was like, oh, it's live stream. I'm like, cool. I'm like, talk about a welcome. Here we go. So, and then the athletic director was great. The coaches were great. Everything was great. It was a fun evening, and a great environment in there as well. Senior night, everybody came out in numbers. And Dan and I more or less gave a preview to how we are in the sports show because we were just kind of ragging on each other here.
Well, and it's the girls' game was, like you said, it was close, and the boys' game wasn't close, and it's hard to do play-by-play in a game that's not close. And I know Molten Borough pretty well, and I know the coaches, staff there, and I know a lot of people in Molten Borough, and there are some people that have gone back and watched the game that reach out to me and have had some questions. And Molten Borough
questions.
The girls' team's hosting a playoff for the first time in a long time. So we'd be doing them a disservice, like you said, if we didn't talk about that. That's a girls' team. Matt Swedberg, who was the boys' coach for years and years and years, was a Molten Borough Academy alum, won a championship there. He was an incredible basketball player at Plymouth State. He's turned that program around. That program for girls was not very good when he took it over, and they took their lumps. And it's like any high school team. If you get pushed hard, some people like it. Some people are like, oh, I really don't like basketball anymore. I might go do this. He's got a team that's competitive, that is playoff ready. They've played some close games. They're starting the playoffs next week. And, I wish them nothing but the best. I mean, I've known Matt for years. So they're really good. Molten Borough boys had a tough year. They've had some tough years of late, just based on the fact that, their talent just isn't there like it was 10 years ago. And there's no way to really say it in a comfortable way. Lisbon had 7 kids. 7. Yeah. And they started 2 8th graders, and it's just not a varsity team.
Right.
It's not. It's unfortunate to say. It's nice to win the game the way, to end this season with a win, but you knew you were going to win. You knew you were going to win handily. Starting off in a press, probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
You're up 32. I wouldn't have been shooting from the black line, or 10 or 5 or 8 steps inside half court. I wouldn't have done that. But it's a youngish team that hasn't won a lot of games, so they're not necessarily used to playing with a lead. It's a newer coaching staff. Like, it's a Pandora's box of things that just, in a situation in a game like that, it's tough to not show up the other team. And Lisbon, they didn't win a game all year. It was a tough season for them, and it was hard. It was hard to call.
Easy.
Yeah, it was hard to call, and it was just, there were times where I'm like, I can't wait for this to be kind of over for everybody, just based on the fact of like how it was going. I mean, Moultonborough had 3 seniors that they did an excellent job at sending off. They played well. There's potential there for them to take a couple of steps moving forward to get back to that competitiveness in Division 4. But, I mean, I wish the girls nothing but the best as they go to the playoffs. Moultonborough boys, unfortunately, didn't make it. But Gilford boys and Moultonborough girls are the only Lakes Region teams left in the tournament.
Yep. Yeah. And that's before Division 2 starts, of course, because Laconia is going to be in there for them. Yeah. But we'll talk about that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I know. I mean,
When you talk about that, I'm going to take a commercial break.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Commercial break. Interesting. No, but I mean, look at that. It opens up the middle.
I know there's so much more room for
this is not. We can watch softball. Ooh, that looked like it was a strike 3. Of course, he'll come off the field now. So, no, but I mean, you're right. The girls' game was good. It was close. It was competitive. I mean, when I think of Moultonborough now, I'm thinking of Veely immediately.
She's she's their go-to player. She's the most athletic.
She's an amazing athlete, amazing player. Definitely your playmaker as well as your play executor. And that team in general though is going to. I think they were 6th in the playoffs.
They finished in the 6th seed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they could be one of your teams that could be getting into that quarterfinal,
semifinal.
And
we talked about seeding a little bit, earlier in the show, and that we talk about how that kind of matters where you finish up, and they're in a good spot bracket-wise. Like, they're as a 6th seed, they're gonna play, the 2 or the 3. If they, go into the quarterfinal, like you're avoiding that 1 seed as long as you possibly can, and realistically, that's what you want. You don't want to play. You want to play the 1 seed at the last possible second. So, I mean, They're going to host Pittsburgh Canaan. If they win, they're going to play the winner of Epping and Woodsville. Epping's a 3 seed.
So who are they playing, you said?
They're playing Pittsburgh Canaan.
Pittsburgh Canaan, all right.
So a North Country school. Mm-hmm. But, they're on the good side of the bracket. They're not going to see they won't see number 1 Groveton until the finals. If they make it that far. Colebrook is the 2, Epping is the 3, and it's high school sports. Anything can happen in a 16 seed tournament. Anything could happen.
Any given Sunday.
Yeah, and I mean I've watched the 2 Interlakes games against Moultonborough. I watched them play Lisbon. I watched the end of their game against Profile. Matt's a really good. He's a really, really good coach, and he does a good job at getting the team ready to play, and their press is good. They run through their half-court sets well. Mm-hmm. They put the V-League girl in the top of their zone, and they rotate outstanding. Like they're quick and really pushing the 3-point shooters from the other team to moving the ball, and they just rotate well. I mean, they have potential if things work out. I mean, they've got a really good path to where they want to go. And at this point, it's really just how much do you want it? And they've got a coach who's got championship pedigree that's been through it at all different seedings, that if they just listen to him a little bit more so than normal, he can kind of help guide them through to where they want to be in a spot where girls basketball at Moultonborough hasn't been to in a long time.
Right, and now they're just going to host 1 playoff game. They'd be on the road
the rest of the way, unless if Woodsville upsets Epping, they would host the quarterfinal.
Gotcha.
If they take care of business against Pittsburgh.
Okay, interesting. That game of Tuesday at Moultonborough Academy.
Yep, 7 o'clock, I think.
7 o'clock.
Unless Chris and the other AD agreed to move it up earlier. But Moultonborough is one of those schools that likes playing varsity games later on in the evening, which There's nothing wrong with that. No. Everyone used to do it, but now everything kind of starts at 4:30. 4:30 to just kind of get everybody home.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good luck to the Molten Borough girls. Congrats to the boys for winning that senior night game, as we had mentioned. But like I said, it was definitely fun getting back up or going up to Molten Borough and covering up there, and yeah. So let's talk about our upcoming schedule.
Are we going to talk about Laconia?
Right. We have to talk about Laconia. Stop it.
Just
only because
I thought that's what you were talking about. We
were continuing about Molten Borough quickly. I watched the first half of the Laconia boys game.
What did you think of the coverage, just out of curiosity?
I don't know who did the broadcast.
Announcing wise,
yeah, he's outstanding.
Okay,
he does a really, really good job.
That is Eric Nelson.
Is he a Laconia guy?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The video is a little delayed going back and forth, but that's whatever. And I texted, it was basically warming up to watch the Gilford game because it started earlier. Same thing, I shut it off at halftime.
That game, though, you could have shut off at halftime.
Oh, I know, yeah, exactly. I texted Joey.
Yep.
I texted him, and I was like, this Laconia team is hot because everything was going in. Everything. Their best player, their number one, who played soccer for them, I can't remember his name right now, and I'm doing him a disservice. I mean, the kid was hitting it from everywhere.
Was it Roberts?
The point guard.
Oh, I have no idea.
I can't remember his name. He just broke. He's the fifth kid to get to 1,000 points.
Yeah, Roberts.
Yeah,
Roberts.
He had 18. He had 18 like halfway through the second quarter, which was like pacing how many points Conville had. Wow. Like he was outscoring Conville by himself, and he wasn't the only guy. They brought a couple of guys in off the bench that were knocking down some threes. Whoever, I think Nelson, you said it was announcing, said that they averaged like 6 made threes a game, and they had like 10 or 11 in the first half. It was 45-20 something. It was a blowout, and the Beck kid was dominant down low. Anything that was a miss, he was turning it into a second or third opportunity. I mean, Conville battled, don't get me wrong, but yeah. Laconia flexed their muscle. They're a really, really good Division II team. I texted Devin the same thing. I'm like, this game is unreal because they just couldn't miss. Yeah. Anything they wanted, they were able to go and get. It was a nice way for Laconia to finish. I know that was senior day for them. It was a nice way to send off a handful of those guys.
I was going to say, I think they play at Oyster River on Tuesday. But, yeah.
Finish the season?
Yeah, for their regular season, for an alley. But
that should be good. That should be a good game then.
Yeah. We'll have the girls at Laconia on Tuesday against Oyster River. Also, hopefully a good game between them. But, it was quite the game. I mean, I was watching from Gilford during our broadcast, and it was, first of all, Eric did a great job. The whole crew there did a great job. And thank you again to Eric for coming on. He's now one of our new announcers, so I'm super happy to have him a part of the payroll. But it was overall a great.
I know, right? I guess we don't get paid for this.
We're working on it. Okay,
Elite Sports Academy.
We're seeing it. We're seeing.
I'm just kidding.
They're explaining why they haven't been here for weeks. There's no this involved.
I have to go get this to pay my bills. So.
I'm working on it. All right, we're getting there. We'll chat. Anyways, I mean, overall though, it was a really good game. And as I wrote in the note here, Laconia Saintcham's doing Laconia Saintcham things. Yep. And they're going to be a powerhouse.
They finished the season undefeated at home. Mm-hmm. Like, not that Laconia is a daunting place to go play. Like, they have a bigger gym than I haven't been to a lot of D2 schools, so it's a little bit more money in those areas usually. So they probably have nicer facilities than some of the D3s that I go and visit.
They're all larger facilities.
Yeah, like they're going to have. So they're not necessarily bringing teams in to play. It's not like us going into Gilford and be like, this gym is huge.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they're playing.
Gilford's probably a small gym compared to D2 schools.
Yeah, probably. And they're like so if they're going into Laconia, they're not necessarily going into a bigger atmosphere. It's a little bit hostile. I mean, you and I can both relate. I mean, anytime we've played a game in Laconia, the fans can be a little bit unruly at times.
No.
But I would think that's probably the same atmosphere in some of those other D2 schools a little bit from time to time. Like Laconia is just, they're an athletic team. They can push the ball and transition well. They can shoot really well. I mean, it helps if you have a kid with Beck size. You can't coach height. I mean, that's a tough. I mean, he towered over the other kid from Conval. So, I mean, that's a tough team to play anywhere. I think you could put that game on the moon, and they still probably would do exactly what they do regardless. I know I watched them play against Gilford, and it was just an off night. Beck got into foul trouble. The point guard wasn't shooting as well as I think he is used to, so that was basically what turned that into like a blowout to the Gilford side. But I bet you if they played again, neutral site per se, that's a good boxing match. That would be a good one to watch.
So on the moon, let's just do
Yeah,
neutral
I mean,
site. That would be a neutral site.
I'm sure somebody's got the idea up there. I don't know what country, but
We got it. We'll make it happen. Yeah. DPPG, we'll hook up with Elon Musk. Get the teams up
the
there.
Space Force out there. We'll build an arena.
Yeah, I think we got this. What do you think, Foley?
Just trying to come up with a
Just put a dome over it.
dome it.
Yeah, we just dome it.
It'll happen as soon as Interlakes puts the lights up outside.
There it is.
So
There it is.
never.
No, jeez. But no, I mean, I think Laconia's going to definitely be a force in
They'll
the
finish.
playoffs.
They're the 1 seed right
I
now,
believe
right?
so, yeah. If they haven't already
That's what I
locked
was
it
trying
up.
to look up, but
Yeah, it's
the
tough.
internet
Yeah, it's tough in here.
services.
Why don't you get on the You know what? We'll deal with that.
Get on the Wi-Fi.
Get on the Wi-Fi. I bet if you go on there, I can accept you right now. Yeah. Ready? We're going to blow the old guy's mind here. While he does that, yeah.
I think depending on how Sauhegan finishes up, they both only have 1 loss.
Yeah.
So I would think they're 16-1. So
My guest,
No, go to the locked one.
they're all
wait.
locked.
Oh, hold on. Go to
Go to the
Elite,
locked one.
Elite Sports.
Ta-da.
Hold on. There it is. Share password with Coach Foley? No. I should have denied you.
Too late.
Wrong-o. Anyways, now you're on. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
Still doesn't work.
we're streaming on it, so it should be.
It's taking up too much bandwidth.
Yeah, my bad. Anyways, so we really kind of talked about every other game we've covered this week for DPPG. So I guess let's talk about this upcoming schedule, which isn't much because girls basketball at Laconia versus Oyster River and hockey at BG versus Kearsarge Plymouth. This is like an awkward, this is like the fool's spring. You know what I mean? Like when you go winter and then it gets warm, it's like, wow, the season's over.
And this is why he needed that day off last week, and he could not cover the Interlakes boys game at Hopkinton.
He had to wrap his head around this, so
He needed a day off to prepare for Laconia girls against Oyster River and BG at Merrill Fay.
Makes total sense.
You done?
I don't think he's done.
Represent.
Whatever. Anyway.
He got whatevered. Nice.
Anyways, so that's our schedule.
It's a short week.
It's a short week, yeah.
There's the bigger, if you will, games and competition stuff that's going on are being carried by the other
NFHS,
people.
yeah.
The other people.
Yeah, we don't.
And therefore, it's just it could be a busy week. It's just not going to be.
Right.
So
and it kind of is a bummer. I mean, the other people, the NFHS network has the right to first refusal on all playoff games, and they cover the finals, and then they can choose if they're going to cover the semis or not. And according to the NHIAA, they chose to cover the semis, which is
with the 4 teams that are in there. Yeah.
I was going to say, which is fine because if you think about it, on the production end of things, and I'll tell people this until I'm red in the face, we have a hockey game that night. You know, in order for us to go to Goffstown, that means we would have to find a crew to go to hockey because we would have to we're contracted for hockey.
Well, you got to go to where the money's at. If you get paid to go do BG, you've got to go do BG.
Exactly. So that's
you're
why
taking a significant hit to go cover.
I was going to say
Final Four game.
I was going to say as much as I would love to go cover Gilford in the Final Four. Yeah. It was kind of a breath of fresh or a blessing in disguise, I guess you could say, that we couldn't.
Right.
in the NFHS network, they're going to do a great job. They'll do a great. Don't narrow your eyes at me.
My eyes are always narrow.
That's true. That's true. Anyways, so yeah, that's this week. It's really short. Good luck to all the teams still playing in the championship games, though, semifinals for boys and girls. The boys are on Wednesday. The girls are on Thursday. And then both finals for Division III back-to-back on Saturday at Keene.
Nice.
Boys and girls?
Yeah. The girls are at like 5 and the boys are at like 7:30. So you want to go cover Division III basketball, just go buy the ticket and plant yourself in the top row of the Keene gym, and there you go.
Is Keene in Costa Rica? Because that's where I'll be.
Oh, I was going to say.
Is that where you're going for February break?
I was going to say, I'm like, where were you going?
Was that your Florida missed trip voucher?
No. No.
You didn't get off the ground.
Didn't get out of the airport. No, we planned this a while ago and looking forward to it.
Good.
It's going to be awesome.
Good.
It's awesome. Congrats.
I'll
have fun with that.
tune in to the
NFHS network.
No, I won't.
$11.99 for a monthly subscription.
I'll follow Josh Spalding on Twitter and see what happens from down there.
There you go.
Maybe I'll head down there too and be like, hey, if you don't follow him, I'll also try and push some tweets.
I'm counting down the days. It's almost Arizona time out here. Getting there.
Arizona time.
Yeah.
He doesn't
World Baseball Classic, my guy. USA.
Racing's on.
You going to see the games in Arizona or Florida?
Arizona.
Yeah. Because I'll be down in Florida for the quarterfinals of the WBC.
Oh, really?
But I don't.
I'm going for a pool play.
Yeah.
So I'll watch them play against those 4 teams.
My brother's tentatively working on trying to
It should be
go
good.
to it.
It should be
I would
some
go.
really.
I would go in a
It should be
heartbeat.
some really good baseball.
Yeah.
I will say I was a little disappointed when I first did the deep dive into it. I was really hoping that the USA would be playing against or in the same pool as like the Dominican and Cuba and all of those teams. And I was a little bit bummed that they weren't. But then at the same time, I'm like, if they were in the same pool as all those teams, they're not getting out of pool play.
Yeah.
They're not getting out of pool play.
It's gonna
So
be crazy.
I'm like, this way here, they can at least make the semifinals or the quarterfinals, whatever.
Yeah.
We should beat up on Great Britain. We should beat up on Colombia. Mexico might give us a little bit of a game, but it'll be fun. It's Chase Field.
Yeah.
I've been out there. It'll be nice to get away. It'll be a little. I'm sure it'll be cold out there and warm here, knowing my luck. But
we're looking at either WBC or hit spring training games for the Yankees.
oh, absolutely. Oh.
Yeah.
I was trying to get to a Red Sox-Yankees spring training game, and by the time I went to go to get the tickets, they were sold out.
Yeah.
Nestor Cortez did throw a bullpen side session the other day. Feels no pain, so
Although we lost
relieved. He's
Montes
off
there.
Yeah, well, Montes wasn't good.
Listen, you need a
Montes
fifth
wasn't
starter.
good. They got to go get somebody.
I know, but
I don't know why our wallets tightened up after Aaron Judge. We lost Benintendi. We brought in Rondon. He's good, but we've got to get some pitching.
Isn't Aaron Judge still a Yankee?
He is, but after they re-signed him, they didn't spend
don't-
any money.
Don't look at me like
They
that.
got to go get the big names.
I will talk racing for hours. Baseball?
Oh, this is the best time of the year right now.
It is.
So
The
much
Daytona
fun.
500's on tonight.
So much fun.
Then
2
we
weeks.
Head out to
F1,
California.
baby.
We head out to California.
Can't wait. Drive to Survive, Season 5. It's
When
the
does that come out?
23rd.
23rd.
23rd. Can't wait.
I visualized what Dan's mind does when I talk about racing. He started talking about baseball, and I created a paper airplane,
Nice.
literally.
So there you are.
Yeah. So I feel you when we talk about racing here. Dan's just like, duh.
Yeah, but I'll occasionally watch racing.
I mean, I will too. I'll watch opening day for baseball. That's about it.
There's 162 games. If I had the opportunity to watch every single one, I would 100% do it. You can still do stuff while the game is on in the
Same with
background.
racing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sitting here slandering NASCAR or F1. It's just if I had the opportunity to pick between Yankees baseball losing by 10 or a random NASCAR race, not Daytona, I'm probably going to watch the Yankees get beat over,
It's fine.
one.
Listen.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, it's fine. Racing's more of a smart person sport. I understand.
They're going in a circle.
Oh my gosh, you guys are running 90 feet and waiting for another pitch.
It's a left-hand turn.
You want
left-hand
to sit here?
Driving is easy.
It's oh my god.
I'm gonna go do it. I'll try to get up to 95, 100 on 106 on the
Don't
way
do
back.
that.
Please
do
don't.
that.
Any
Don't do
cops
that.
on the way home? Pick up the bluish green Hyundai truck. I'll be at 100.
Nope.
Testing
Please don't.
my
Please
skills.
Please
don't.
don't. Please don't. And in other news, we are looking for a co-host.
I would highly discourage you from doing that.
We are looking for another co-host.
I'll do it on 93. It's straighter.
There you go.
No, it's straighter. That's the reason you wouldn't. Okay. That no. Anyways,
Just kidding.
there it is. There's the disclaimer.
Is he?
I hope.
Yeah,
he
no,
is.
I'm good. Pills for that.
Nope. Oh my gosh. All right. So we're just gonna glaze over that. Any final thoughts?
Look, should be an outstanding semifinals for boys basketball for Division III. I'm gonna try to get to those games and check it out. We'll see.
Hot take over here. Whoever wins Gilford Hopkinton wins the whole thing.
Disagree.
I think those games will be really good. Forgot to mention Molten Borough girls going into the playoffs on an 11-game win streak. So they're playing some good basketball. Wish them good luck as well. And it's almost spring. We got a workout tonight. We're getting after it. We're starting weekdays stuff now that basketball's over. So we are fully invested into the spring season now.
It's crazy because even we are too. Like we're already starting to work on our schedule, looking into things like that. What?
Speaking of spring sports,
Monthly card draw?
Tops baseball dropped on Wednesday. So Series 1 baseball cards are out just in time for the monthly card show,
There it is.
which is this Wednesday night. New hours,
No.
8 to
I
11.
was gonna say, what are the new hours?
We used to do 6 to 12. Now we're going 8 to 11.
So you got shorter?
Got shorter.
Wow.
Condensed the time.
3-hour window instead of a 6.
Perfect.
I can only tune in at
Capture your
11:15.
audience. That's okay.
That's awkward though.
That's when we go to the trade night.
Oh.
He only has one game Wednesday. He's fine.
He'll
It's
Yeah.
BG against what? Kearsarge Plymouth. That game starts when?
5.
It'll be over at 5:15. You could probably put the sports show on right there on your phone right there.
Just saying.
Because that
It's
one,
free to attend.
yeah, the Guerin kid's going to have a Hattie 5 minutes into the first period.
my
and
gosh.
It'll be
He almost sounds bitter.
no, it's not bitter. I'm just saying, I just call it how I see it.
He
That
just
team-
wants to drive
that team's
traffic
really good.
to the
DPPG.
monthly card show.
No.
They're going to go from DPPG and be like, this game's over.
Yeah.
I need the cards.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for sports cards after tonight's game, hey, maybe I will come up and do the hockey game.
Oh my! I can see it now. I can.
Senior Day brought to you by TradeSafe.
Oh my gosh! All right.
Good
Well,
times.
Thank you guys for coming out tonight.
This morning, thanks for having us.
Whatever. This
I'm
morning,
Ron
tonight.
Burgundy.
No, not that. Every time. Every
You have a
time.
paper airplane. We did that for the first time. I got to go. I don't know what to do with my hands right now.
Again. Whatever. All right. So I pick winners.
Wrap it up.
I'm working
guys.
on it.
Let's go.
I want to say thank you all so much for tuning in, watching it live. Don't forget a podcast version of this available tomorrow on Apple Podcasts. I guess that's all I got. Want to say once again thank you to you two for joining me this morning and talking sports. Kind of in that lull point of the season. Next week we'll talk about playoffs for Division II as well as probably ice hockey playoffs, preview that.
Talk championships.
And we'll talk championship because we would do it Sunday morning.
Be right after Division III, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll recap those
Maybe
games.
you'll get some kids from the championship team from St.
Hopkinton.
Thomas to be.
Maybe we can get one from all four and really have a good
I
conversation.
don't know how that would go. Do you
Go
imagine?
well.
Do you
Yeah.
imagine?
They
This
could- they could-
tempers flaring
Nah,
on the
there
court,
won't
and
be
it's
any
like, here, we're
tempers.
going to sit down next to each other the next morning.
Reach out to the ADs and see if we can get a senior from each one after
From each championship team. So
from each Final Four team. We can get the Thompson kid from Mascoma.
But hold on, would you want to do it so that you had like one girl player, one girl, like so you have two, whoever's the girls championship, one from each of them, and then one like the champion and runner up champion runner-up boys too.
I know what you were getting at.
I know what you were thinking.
It's okay.
I know what you were thinking.
Let's talk off air.
Okay. We'll come up with a plan. But anyways, thank you all so much for tuning in. For Dan and Mike, my name's Devin. Hope you have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you all real soon. Ooh, wasn't bad.
Peace out.